Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the City Council Planning Committee meeting. My name is Christine Stewart. I'm the Deputy City Clerk. As this is the first meeting of the City Council Planning Committee, the first order of business is the appointment of the chair for the committee. So I will start the meeting and announce that we are going to proceed to call for nominations from the floor for the position of chair for the City Council Planning Committee and Planning Advisory Committee.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Paul Carr for chair.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion moved by Councillor Carr, moved by Councillor Williams and seconded by Councillor Kelly, that Councillor Carr be nominated as chair of the City Council Planning Committee and Planning Advisory Committee. And I will call for the vote on that motion. All in favor? Are there any, before I proceed, are there any other nominations from the floor for the position of chair? Okay, seeing none. If I can have a motion then as well to indicate that the nominations for the position of chair are now closed. So I see the mover is Councillor Culhane and a seconder. Thank you. And if I can call for the vote on that, on the motion to close the nominations. Okay, thank you. It's at this point then that Councillor Carr can assume the chair.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the support. Appreciate it, and looking forward to some good work we'll do here at this committee. So next order of business is the appointment of vice chair, and nominations from the floor are now in order for the position of vice chair of the City Council Planning Committee and Planning Advisory Committee. Are there nominations for vice chair of the City Council Planning Committee and Planning Advisory Committee? Councillor Williams.
I'd like to nominate David Joyce for vice chair.
It's limited at this stage to the council members, not the...
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay. So the deputy clerk's saying that it's limited to members of council.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Culhane.
So moved by Councillor Kelly, Councillor Culhane as vice chair. Are you a seconder? Councillor McCaw. So the motion is that Councillor Culhane be nominated as vice chair of the City Council Planning Committee and Planning Advisory Committee. All in favor? That motion is carried. As there are no further nominations from the floor, Councillor Culhane is acclaimed as vice chair of the City Council Planning Committee and Planning Advisory Committee. Congratulations. So do I do that first and then the disclosure?
No, sorry, disclosure.
Okay. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Okay, seeing none, I have some opening remarks. The planning meeting is being heard by the City Council Planning Advisory Committee, and public notice has been given in accordance with the Planning Act. The non-elected members of the Planning Advisory Committee are, and I see this is not updated, that's okay, Mr. John Beltudis, Ms. Catherine Brown, Mr. Paul Jennings, and Mr. David Joyce. Citizen appointees may ask questions and participate in the discussion in order to assist in making recommendations to the Council, but may not make motions or vote in connection with the public meeting. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the City of Belleville to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Belleville before the related bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make an oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Belleville before the related bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add that person or public body as a party. Any persons wishing to be advised of the Belleville Planning Advisory Committee's recommendations or City Council's decisions with respect to today's applications are requested to leave their name and address on the appropriate notification sheet located on the clipboard beside the podium. In general, any recommendation made today will be forwarded to the next City Council meeting. The planning, okay, so that's it for that. All right, get that technicality out of the way. So we're public meeting, Planning Act 3.1. Proposed amendment to zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended, 5 Scenic Drive, City of Belleville, County of Hastings, file number B-77-1070. Owner applicant is Martin J. Gertzma, and I'll let Mr. Ashton present the application.
Okay, so this application proposes to rezone the subject lands from the R1 low-density residential type 1 zone to the R122 low-density residential type 1 zone with special provisions, which would make it consistent with zoning along Scenic Drive by permitting an increase in lot coverage and reduction in the front yard and interior side yard depths. The relevant policies of the province and the city's official plan, which will be considered by staff, are listed in the staff report that you have before you tonight. We have noted in the report that no concerns from commenting agencies or the public have been received to date. Once we have had the opportunity to receive any comments from the public meeting, staff will prepare a final report for the March Planning Advisory Committee meeting. The recommendation before committee is to receive the report as information and direct staff to report back once all input from the public, commenting agencies, and municipal departments has been received, assessed, and addressed.
So is there anyone in the public gallery that wishes to speak in favor of the application? Okay, come on forward. If you would just activate the microphone at the podium and state your name. And
Yeah, my name's Martin Gertzma. Actually, I go by Mark.
okay.
Yeah, it's just anticipating building on the subject lot, and it's just to amend the zoning to make it consistent with the development that it's adjacent to. The R1 zoning is a kind of a carryover from the old Thurlow zoning, so the side yard setbacks and the front yard setbacks, particularly the front yard setback on the existing zoning is 7.5 meters. All of the other houses that have been built on the street are set back at approximately 6 meters. So I feel that it would be more consistent with the rest of the development. So anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Gertzma? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the application? And I'll ask a third time, anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone wanting to speak opposed to the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposing the application? And a third time, anyone wishing to oppose the application? So can I get, no other persons responded to the chair's call, so I get a motion that the application be referred to the regular planning meeting for further consideration. Moved by Councillor McCaw, Councillor McCaw, I'm looking the other way. Yeah, Councillor Culhane. All in favor? The motion is carried. 3.2, proposed amendment to zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended, 473 Willett Road, City of Belleville, County of Hastings. File number B-77-1071. Owner is Blaine M. Casey. Applicant is Jamie Casey. Agent is RFA Planning Consultant Incorporated. Mr. Ashton.
So this application proposes to rezone the lands from prime agricultural zone to the rural residential zone as a condition of consent for applications B3218 and B3318. The relevant policies of the province and the city's official plan, which will be considered by staff, are listed in the report you have before you tonight. We have noted in the report that no concerns from commenting agencies or the public have been received to date. Once we have had the opportunity to receive any comments from the public meeting, staff will prepare a final report for the March Planning Advisory Committee meeting. The recommendation before committee is to receive the report as information and direct staff to report back once all input from the public, commenting agencies, and municipal departments has been received, assessed, and addressed.
Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application? Mr. Hutchison?
Good evening. Congratulations on your chairmanship.
Thank you.
Just a couple of things. On page 18, bottom right corner of the report, public comments. I just want to note that this is one of these funny rezonings that's a two-step process. This application went to the public on October 25th, 2018 as a severance, or two severances. So public notification was given to everyone within 60 meters of the subject lands for the Committee of Adjustment meeting on October 25th. No one came to the meeting. The committee, which is a subcommittee of yourselves, approved the severance conditional on several things being done, one of which is rezoning. So really, that committee has already looked at the official plan, the zoning and everything, and approved it. And now the owners are going through the checklist to get the rezoning done, because they're creating two lots, one for each of the children, and therefore it needs to be rezoned rural residential. So just on that public comment section, this is the second go around that the neighbors have already been notified once and chose not to come out. And otherwise it's as I say, it's technicality. It's just approving a condition your committee already put on this, that it had to be zoned to the rural residential. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the application? And I'll ask a third time. Anyone wanting to speak in favor of the application? Anyone wanting to speak opposing the application? Anyone wanting to speak opposing the application? And a third time. Anyone wishing to speak opposing the application? Okay, seeing none, we get a motion to refer that to the Planning Advisory Committee. Moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Councillor Williams. All in favor? Motion is carried. So I'll get an adjournment for this portion of the meeting. Moved by Councillor Culhane, seconded by Councillor Kelly. All in favor? Motion is carried. So, Planning Advisory Committee meeting in attendance. I see Councillor Bill Sanderson is absent and Councillor McCaw is in his place. Number 2, disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none. Number 3, confirmation of minutes. Minutes of the City Council Planning Committee meeting and Planning Advisory Committee meeting held on November 5th, 2018. So, moved by Mr. Joyce, seconded by Mr. Baltutis. All in favor? Motion's carried. So we have no deputations, no correspondence. 6, referrals from the public meeting. 6.1, proposed amendment to zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended, 5 Scenic Drive, City of Belleville, County of Hastings, file number B-77-1070. Owner applicant is Martin J. Gertzma. Policy Planners Report number PP-2019-04. The resolution reads that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends the following to City Council. That report number PP-2019-04 dated February 4th, 2019 regarding proposed amendment to zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended, 5 Scenic Drive, former Township of Thurlow, now City of Belleville, County of Hastings, be received as information, and that staff report back at such time as input from the public, commenting agencies, and municipal departments has been received, assessed, and addressed to the satisfaction of the Engineering and Development Services Department. Moved by Councillor McCaw, seconded by Mr. Baltutis. Any questions on that, Mr. Joyce?
I think it's the clarification, having been on planning before, through the chair to Mr. Ashton or Mr. Bove. Does this mean that the actual motion will come to the next planning meeting with a yay or nay? It is different, the process now, so I just need clarification. I read all the notes,
Yeah,
I read all the background, so I think from before's experience to this experience, obviously, and I know you're trying to comply with a new provincial plan. Is this now coming back to planning and then planning to council? So is it deferring another meeting? Is that what's going to be happening now on a go-forward basis?
Mr. Ashton?
Okay, Mr. Terry. So yes, so a final recommendation report will be prepared and then back to the Planning Advisory Committee. See, these two applications will come back next month with the final recommendation report and go to council. This is just to receive the report tonight and receive any public comments as well. So
just a follow-up. So since there is no comments per se,
yeah,
it'll come back in its form to be approved, accept or not. So it's just, but this will be the process on an ongoing basis. So there'll technically be 2 planning sessions to get to final council.
Yes.
In this case, okay.
Yeah, that'll give us an opportunity to receive public comments before a recommendation is put forward, which I think later on the reports talk about LPAT. That's one of their requirements. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, good question though. Any other questions or comments? So all in favor? Motion's carried. 6.2, proposed amendment to zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended, 473 Willett Road, former Township of Thurlow, now City of Belleville, County of Hastings, file number B-77-1071. Applicant is Jamie Casey, owner is Blaine M. Casey, agent is RFA Planning Consultant Incorporated. Policy Planners Report number PP-2019-05. The resolution reads that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends the following to City Council: that report number PP-2019-05 dated February 4th, 2019 regarding proposed amendment to zoning bylaw number 3014 as amended, 473 Willett Road, former Township of Thurlow, now City of Belleville, County of Hastings, be received as information, and that staff report back at such time as input from the public, commenting agencies, and municipal departments has been received, assessed, and addressed to the satisfaction of the Engineering Development Services Department. Need a motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Culhane. Any questions on that resolution? All in favor? That motion's carried. Report 7.1, the Ontario Belleville Planning Framework, Manager of Policy Planning's report number PP-2019-06. The resolution reads that the report number PP-2019-06, the Ontario Belleville Planning Framework, be received. Moved by Councillor Culhane, seconded by Mr. Beltudis. Mr. Ashton, do you want to, I know we've got a number of items to be received, and I know, as Mr. Joyce has pointed out, for us veterans of this committee, this is a new process. Do you have any comments that you want to run through with some of these?
Okay, sure.
Okay.
So I guess just basically, especially with the newer committee and council members, we did, the department did provide an overview report on basically the planning framework, which would be considered by the City of Belleville. We kind of went through the planning process, what are the basic principles of planning, went through what is a planning consideration, what is not a planning consideration, as well as a discussion of the planning hierarchy. For instance, we discussed the Planning Act itself, which is the legislation that sets out the ground rules for land use planning, and we discuss how it defines the municipality's role as includes making local planning decisions and ensuring planning decisions and planning documents are consistent with the provincial policy statement and conform or do not conflict with provincial plans. We did a quick overview of the provincial policy statement. These are sort of sometimes known as motherhood statements, but basically the provincial policy statement is provides the overall policy direction on matters of provincial interest related to land use planning, and it says it provides the requirements that decisions of council shall be consistent with the PPS. The report also discusses the official plan and of the City of Belleville, and it just goes over how it's prepared with input from the community to ensure that our future planning and development will meet the specific needs of the community. And we also note in the report that the official plan was approved in 2002, and it is currently being updated. And the first phase is a determination of land requirements of the city, which will be presented to the public in early spring. And in the second phase, the consultants will be updating the existing official plan policies themselves, which have to be consistent with the provincial policy statement and the Planning Act. So this staff report also identifies that the zoning bylaw controls the use and size and locations of buildings and other such matters as parking requirements. So I guess the point is that this is the framework, and it's and this framework is considered when there is an appeal to the local planning tribunal. So when council is making a decision, its decision ideally should be based upon planning considerations, and it should be consistent with the provincial policy statement, provincial plans, and the city's official plan. If not, then the tribunal may overturn council's decision. So it's sort of an information piece, just so all the moving pieces sort of are set and what's more important than the other sort of idea.
Okay, thank you. So is there any questions from the committee on this overview? Mr. Baltutis. Could you just activate your microphone there? No, that's okay.
So tonight's meeting is the only night or where the public can voice their yay or nay or their opinions to go further? So there's no other time that the public can come into the and make their comments?
Mr. Ashton.
Well, they could provide me it in writing as well, or they could provide it before the meeting or maybe immediately after if they wanted to follow up with written comments, for example. Essentially, the public meeting is what LPAT recognizes as sort of that time where people have the opportunity to say something. Now, other councils and stuff may, if there's a controversial application, some councils may entertain people coming forward sort of meeting after meeting after meeting, but while other municipalities have rules and procedures that say the only time you're allowed to get up in front of council to speak about an application is at the public meeting, but that's based upon the rules and procedures of the municipality. So technically, it is the public meeting this evening that you're only supposed to get up and say something in front of the committee and council.
According to the way it's going to work for the city of Belleville is that they have their opportunity on a meeting like tonight, make their case, and then it's around the table like we've said before, and then it's going to come back to us again?
Yes, so the final recommendation. Sorry if I can expand. So obviously tonight there wasn't any concerns, but if there was a concern, that would be something that perhaps the applicant could address as well as part of his application and update his application between the public meeting and the final recommendation. So there's always that opportunity too. So it's not set up as a yes or no. The applicant could also modify their application in the meantime. So I think there's that benefit to this process as well.
Mr. Joyce?
So carrying on from Mr. Baltutis, I guess the issue was we've always had a public meeting. It was always the first part. And then we encourage people not to leave because we're going to discuss it further in the second part. So really all we've done is we've continued the compression of the two meetings. Before we tended to modify some of the proposals in the second meeting and try to make it compatible with the input we received. Now all we're saying is there's going to be a bigger gap. I mean, we could always have the public meeting a different day or night than the PAC meeting, but then that's not effective, obviously, from a staff point of view. But that's effectively what we're getting now by having the split meeting, because we've always had the public meeting. It's always been the first part. Now it's really the only part that they can provide input, and then it gets changed, and then they come back for back to PAC.
So one of the questions, if say this was appealed, a decision was appealed, and I provided my recommendation at the meeting, public meeting, if I got up on the stand, they would say, Mr. Ashton, how did you consider public input before you made your recommendation? I wouldn't have an answer to that, so But that's the requirement, so yeah. So this addresses that process.
Any other questions? Councillor Culhane.
A comment, if I may, and a question. The information is very helpful and very clear, and thank you for providing it. As far as a public meeting goes, is there a limit to the number of people that can come to the mic?
Mr. Johnson?
No, I think, well, just with past practices here, and probably the chair could speak to it. Like, I know there was one meeting where they encouraged, if everyone was going to say the same thing, they made encouraged having a spokesperson for that group.
I think I was at that meeting.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Was that pertaining to an
Church-
application?
Church
that- yeah,
Street,
Church
yes.
Street? Yeah, I was at that meeting. Okay, thank you. And that was well handled. That was well handled. I have another question. I don't know if this is a
No,
pertinent
go ahead.
point.
Yep.
Regarding the summary.
Okay,
sheet.
we'll
Is that
actually get to that
wrong
further in the
place?
agenda.
Okay.
Yep, nope, that's fine.
Okay.
Other questions? Councillor Williams.
And just, maybe just a comment, but just again, being first to this process, so I think I'm understanding from Mr. Joyce, this isn't going to change the speed in which we're approving applications. And just for benchmark, just being new, what right now, and this might go to Director Bove as well, what right now is our benchmark for zoning, and then say for a minor variance, if we're looking at certain applications, do we have an average timeline for each of those right now?
Mr. Bove?
No, the city doesn't have any benchmarks per se. We do monitor, I guess, through some of our KPIs, our timeframes on these. I would note that historically, the process that we're outlining tonight going forward, historically that was the way the city had always handled applications, is they would receive public input at one PAC meeting. The report would come back at the following meeting, and we moved away from that a number of years ago, and have been operating probably in a system that was expedient for the applicants, might not necessarily have been the best way to do it for any challenges we had to the decisions of council. So we don't have any benchmarks. But it gives a time frame for anyone putting in an application that they know the public meeting will be at one planning committee meeting, and a recommendation coming out of the committee to council will be at the following meeting. Generally speaking, will be at the following meeting.
And the reason I'm asking, just our education at Roma, there was a planning group, it's something, a process that was brought up. I'm just wondering if the chairs or if Mr. Bove's heard of it. It was a community planning permit system, if that's something the city of Belleville's ever looked at.
I think that previously was called a development permit system, if I'm not mistaken, and it was implemented in the town of Carleton Place, and it was looked at, I believe, in the town of Gananoque. But very few municipalities decided to go that route. It has its own challenges, and most, after seeing it functioning, chose not to go with it. And I'm not up to speed on what the current legislation is on it. It probably changed with some of the planning changes that we've outlined for you tonight in some of the reports, but something that we can definitely look into if the committee and council is interested in pursuing that.
And that's great, and it's just for information, it might be something later to look at, but apparently for traditional zoning, it brought that from an average of 4.5 months per application down to 2, and traditional zoning from 2 to 3 months down to 1. So that would just be my rationale for looking at speeding up planning, but that might be another time for another discussion.
Any other questions or comments? So I have a motion to receive. All in favor? Motion's carried. 7.2, updating Belleville's planning application process to comply with Bill 139 and changes to the Planning Act. Manager of Policy Planning Report Number PP-2019-02. Resolution reads that Report Number PP-2019-02, updating Belleville's planning application process to comply with Bill 139 and changes to the Planning Act be received. Moved by Mr. Joyce, seconded by Councillor McCaw. Mr. Ashton, do you want to speak to this one as well?
Okay. So with it, this is a fairly lengthy report because it's has a lot of moving parts again. I did put a key facts section near the top of the report, so I think those are important things to look at. Written record is important, so that's what the LPAT looks at, the written records. That's why consultants now, or applicants sometimes submit a planning justification report of their own, because that becomes part of the written record. You know, it does talk the key facts about the purpose of the initial public meeting is to receive information, including public input, and ask questions of clarification. It talks about if there is public input or new input, maybe before a decision is being made concerning an application, it should be referred back to staff so it can be reviewed and become part of the written record. It just talks about what the LPAT would consider as public input, which is information that's either written or provided during this public meeting session. Number 5 is actually very important. Obviously, you know, as we move along, you might not always agree with my recommendations, but if you are going to sort of refuse an application that I have recommended or staff has recommended, within that resolution, provide planning reasons. And then if you go back to the first report, there was that list of what are planning reasons and what aren't planning reasons. I think that's really important within your resolution. And I know that sometimes during the discussions, you talk about, well, we shouldn't have this because of this, or we shouldn't have that because of that. And then it gets to the resolution, and the application is refused, but no reason is given within that resolution. So just if you are going to make a resolution, put the planning reasons within your resolution of why you're turning it down. That's very important, because that's what LPAT is looking for if council does decide to turn down an application. The other points are council decisions are to be consistent with the PPS and the official plan. An official plan is required to be up to date and consistent with the PPS. Well, that's a little tricky because right now our official plan isn't consistent with our PPS. We're working through that. Council, and the last one, council decisions not based upon provincial policy and official plan conformity that do get appealed to LPAT may be referred back to council by the local planning appeal tribunal, and they'll say your decision wasn't consistent with the provincial policy statement or the official plan, so therefore reconsider it. They'll sort of turn it back to you to make another decision, and if it still gets turned down and appealed again to LPAT, then they may consider to overturn council's decision at that point in time. So those are sort of the 8 key facts, I guess, out of this whole Bill 139 that changed the OMB into the LPAT process.
Any questions on that report? Okay, I have a motion to receive. All in favor? Motion's carried. 7.3, guidelines for the role of council members in the public planning process. Manager of Policy Planning report number PP-2019-03. Resolution reads that report number PP-2019-03, guidelines for the role of council members in the public planning process be received. Moved by Councillor Culhane, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Mr. Ashton.
So, obviously, there's a lot of opportunity for within the planning process for councillors to sort of be invited to participate. So what we did was we reviewed Section 10 of the Municipal Councillors Guide, and which addresses the role of municipal councillors in the planning process, and we prepared best practices and guidelines for your consideration. Which basically to ensure the appearance of impartiality and fairness throughout council's involvement in the planning process. So the report does outline the process of the statutory public meeting and highlights the purpose of the meeting to formally hear and receive public comments. which will be incorporated into our recommendation from staff. So the report also outlines, so here we have developers meetings, but there's also could be community meetings as well, and these could be organized by either those people maybe they're supporting the application or maybe they're opposed to the application. So the report does note that council members should be aware that their communications with the developer and residents through a city-controlled email server may be the subject of public disclosure if there is a freedom of information request. I think that's important to note. And the report also discusses social media when engaging the community, and notes that a public statement showing bias or closed mind may be used against the city if a person appeals council's planning decision to the local planning appeal tribunal. So again, similar to the previous two reports, staff has prepared this report for council's information and reference moving forward.
Any questions on that report? Councillor Culhane.
Thank you. This type of public information meeting put forward by the developer, has that ever taken place here?
Mr. Ashton.
Yes. I know in the past council, I've only been here since June, but I know that it was encouraged, and it's just a way that developers can maybe relay information one-on-one with some of the surrounding neighbors and discuss it before it gets to sort of a formal process. I
think it's a great idea. I just don't recall ever being notified that such a meeting was being held during my previous 8 years on council.
Oh, okay.
Would we be invited? Would council be invited?
It would probably be, so the developer would be responsible for the meeting, so whoever they want to invite, they'll invite, sort of idea, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on that report? All in favor to receive? Motion's carried. Section 8, information matters. 8.1, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment monitoring report, and the report is to February 4th, 2019. I'll get a motion to receive that. Moved by Ms. Brown and Mr. Baltutis. And Councillor Culhane, I believe you had a question on that.
I do, thank you. B771058 and B771059, which I was present for the meeting, and the application was denied, and then denied by council, and now gone to appeal. So I'm asking about the actual appeal process. If you can tell me what the time frame is for a decision and how planning council members get notified of the decision.
Sure, Mr. Ashton.
Yeah. So we've received notice that there has been, it's a little but just simply to say that they've appealed the application and it's going to be considered by the LPAT.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, they didn't provide enough information in their original appeal paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
They appealed so it was denied, but then they appealed the decision of LPAT, and so they've allowed them to hear that appeal.
So they've been before LPAT once?
No, they screen it. So LPAT will screen applications, and
Okay.
they'll say, did you fill out that box right? No, you didn't.
Okay.
And then they say, application denied. But there's an opportunity for them to appeal that denial, at which case this is where it's at right now.
Okay.
So we haven't been formally involved yet. The town solicitor is aware of the appeal and that it's before LPAT, and they're monitoring it to see when there would be a hearing date.
So
But
there will be sufficient notice for those homeowners to be aware
Yeah, so
that this is coming back.
as part of the package, the original package, when there is an appeal for an LPAT, is to provide, the mailing list, the circulation list, anybody that appeared here
Mhm.
and signed the information sheet. So all that is provided as part of the original submission by the city to LPAT. So, yeah, there is that awareness of who has been involved in the
By
process.
the same token, it may come back to us pursuant to a decision by LPAT.
Yeah, so it would have to be, because you would have to give authorization, because there will be legal fees involved with it, so council would have to approve those fees. I think that's...
I'm sorry to belabor the
sorry.
point.
Sorry, you know what? Let me ask for clarification,
Okay.
because
Typically, when under the past OMB system, if this was going to a hearing before the tribunal, staff would prepare a report for council's consideration to determine if council wanted to have the city solicitor at the hearing to defend council's decision. In most cases, that's the direction that council gives staff, and we work with the city solicitor to deal with the appeal at the tribunal. The tribunal is new. We have not gone to a hearing on the tribunal, so we're kind of feeling our way along at this. It is a different process than the OMB. So we'll wait to see. These two appeals will likely be the first one that we deal with there. So we'll feel our way along and see what works best for the city in dealing with them.
Okay, I guess what I'm looking for is assurance that there will be plenty of time to let these people know if this is coming back before planning. Or will they get another letter?
Well, typically, we will be required to provide notice to anyone who signed the podium sheet
Perfect.
that it will be going to a hearing, and they will have the opportunity to attend the hearing. There are procedural rules about whether they will be allowed to participate in the hearing, but that will be explained in the notice that we send out to anyone.
Thank you very much.
And as was mentioned, a report would come to council for council to approve the city solicitor to attend on behalf of the city, and that would essentially be council's notification that it's proceeding to that point.
Was that was the process prior to the change to LPAT, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. For new members to the committee, this is just a information item on previous applications, and so if there's any inquiries, this is an opportunity to ask as to the status, as Councillor Culhane just did. So is there any other questions on the information item? So I have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? Motion's carried. 8.2 is the residential land supply and the report as of December 31st, 2018. Can I get a motion to receive that? Mr. Baltutis, Councillor Williams, any questions or comments on that item? Mr. Baltutis?
I know it's hard to get it on a 8x10 piece of paper, but it'd be nice to get a larger version of this so we can actually see where all these little plots of properties are within the city. It's great that the Belleville's expanding and we're getting all these, I can't remember the total number of units, et cetera, but it would be nice to see it on a larger piece of paper. And then my other part of that question is, I know we're enlarging, and I'm sure the city is, I'm sure they know that our water treatment plant can handle all these, and our sanitary and can handle all these extra units and extra bodies and people, or else they wouldn't be allowing it, correct? If the infrastructure wasn't there, basically, yeah.
Mr. Bove?
To answer your first question, the copies of this that we provide to the public down at the counter do have ledger size, so we can certainly mail out the larger size versions to the committee members, which will make it a little easier for you to read it. And to your second question, that's all part of the process that we go through. In Stephen's report on earlier in the agenda, talking about the official plan review and the municipal comprehensive review, we look at what the city's land needs are over the next 20 years. We look at what we have or think we have, and part of that process is looking at how do we service those lands that we see coming on stream over the next 20 years, and how does that fit into the capacity that we have at our water plant and our sewage treatment plant.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor to receive? That motion's carried. Just a question here. Just bear with me for 1 second. So we're just on Section 9, General Business Inquiries, and we need an appointment of Brownfield Subcommittee, and it's usually 3 members, and the chair is 1 member, so looking for 2 other members. Your volunteer? Got lots of volunteers. Okay. So procedurally, do I want nominations then? I should. Yeah, so because there's so much interest in the subcommittee, I'll call for nominations, so I'll do it formally. So somebody like to move somebody? I think you saw some hands shoot up, so Councillor McCaw moves that Mr. Jennings be appointed. I get a seconder for that. Councillor Kelly. Okay. Do I want to ask for any other nominations or just? So I need a second one. Okay. So I need a second motion for, or sorry, another participant. Mr. Joyce. Okay. So Councillor Williams moves Mr. Joyce. I need a seconder for that. Mr. Baltutis. Okay. Let's do. Any other nominations? Councillor McCaw. Okay. So. Okay, 1 second. So, Councillor McCaw, you've already made 1 nomination, so I'm not able to recognize the second one. Councillor Culhane. May I make the nomination? You certainly can if you'd like to activate your mic so everybody knows what it is.
Sorry. It was to nominate Catherine Brown to the committee.
Okay. I get a seconder for that. Councillor Kelly. Should I ask for any more? 1 second. Okay, so staff has said that 4 on that subcommittee is adequate, so we've got myself as chair, Mr. Jennings, Mr. Joyce, and Ms. Brown. So do I need a motion? So can I get somebody to move those? Councillor Williams, Councillor Kelly, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. And then finally, adjournment. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Culhane, Mr. Jennings, all in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you.
What was it called? A community?
Community permits.
It like it's development permit. Yeah.
Community planning purposes.
Yeah.
So they said their whole thing was that how can you maintain good planning and taking into account developmental impacts,